Hi there, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes. Um, Today I was going to show you if you're covering the heel of a knot of a whip or some other shape that's either cylindrical or round. This has got about a 45-degree buildup on it, and it's mostly flat on top. This is a bit over an inch. Um, so this is 1.08 inches in diameter, or 1.1 inches. So it's 1.1 inches. It's a little over an inch of a buildup, and it's about 1.07 inches, so it's just over an inch the other direction. So it's, for those of you who like millimeters, it's 27 millimeters by 27 millimeters. And I call that a square Turk's head because it can be made when the diameter and the height are equivalent. It's easier to deal with laying stuff so that it ends up at about 45 degrees. So I just wanted to talk to you for a minute about that. So this is a piece of 1/2-inch PVC, and this is some rings of 8 ounce or 8/64 or 1/8 inch thick leather that's been wet formed in order to build up so that when you tie the knot, you can tie it and simply slip it on the thing you want to cover. And this is bigger, so with 2 layers, it's considerably bigger, but that makes it easier to install and it takes longer. So this is 1.4 inches, or roughly 35 millimeters. So not quite an 1.5 inches, but it's a bigger mandrel. And these leather pieces that are wet formed allow you to quickly, when you get the knot tied, you can actually reach in and peel out these from the inside of the knot, which leaves you with just the knot to drop on your foundation to dress. And so this is a rawhide clip I've come up with for my mandrel just because I get tired of rubber bands. I hate dealing with rubber bands. And I've got 2 6-foot strings of whip maker cord here, which is what the whip is made out of. This is very similar to, very similar to 275 paracord gutted, but it's pressed flat and it's a finer weave and it's half the thickness of paracord. So it's the same width roughly as 275 paracord, but it is half the thickness, so it's very thin. So this material is I mean, it compresses way down, so you can see it's like 0.35 millimeters thick when it's compressed. But uncompressed, if it's just lightly tensioned, you're probably looking at 0.5 millimeter thick. And the material itself is about right about 3 millimeters wide. It's roughly an eighth of an inch, 3 millimeters wide. It's sold as 3/16" whipmaker cord, but it uh, this material is thinner than that, but that has to do with the diameter when it's made. I'm going to start a knot. I'm going to show you how I build up on a mandrel and build a Turk's head, and then I'm going to do in a second pass in black. I'm going to expand the Turk's head to 8 bights in red, the way I do it, and then I'm going to add a trace of black in a gaucho interweave. It's kind of it's a fairly simple knot, but it's more complicated. I think it's prettier and different. And so the nice part with this clip is it grabs hold as well as a rubber band, and it'll last forever. It's not like the rubber band's going to give out, and I don't have to deal with touching a rubber band. And so each of these pieces are 6 feet. And you really only probably need 5 feet, but you can't cut something longer, so I'm going to start with 6. Just so I have plenty extra. This material is about 5 cents a foot, so it's not terribly expensive. It comes in a spool about this big around and about this wide, and there's 1,000 feet in that space. So I'm screwing a small paracord fit onto the end of this. So this has got a 1.5 millimeter hole, and it's a 3 millimeter fid. And of course, anytime you're trying to shoot video, it's hard to do the prep work in advance and have it work out. So you cut this stuff at a little more than 45 degrees and touch it with a torch and roll it. It'll fit one of these 3-inch steel paracord fids. And one of the best places to get these small paracord needles is a place called Jig Shop Pro. And they come in different colors. Here's one of their nicer aluminum needles. It's got a little better thing, but I want to use it on a 6-foot piece here. So you have to keep the top side, so you want to not get any rolls in it. But we're going to go one loop like that. We're going to come over and cross at about 90 degrees. The nice part is when you start off with a long piece, it takes less and less time the more complicated it gets. We're going to go under the first lead, and you want to make sure you don't snag the nylon woven material with the tip of the needle. And technically, once you come around, if you were to come back underneath, you'd be where you were starting, and you would have a 2-bight Turk's head. But in this case, we're going to come up, as we went under this one, over this one, we're going to go under this one. So we're going to run parallel to this one. So it went under, we're going under. We're going to expand this, so I'm going to add an expansion pass. We're going under this one. And to expand from a 2 to a 4. And if you think about it, from expanding to a 2 to 4, bight Turk's head as you go forward, because we're going to expand this to 8 bights from a 2, and right now we're at a 2. We've now got back to where we started. Well, there's 2 at the top here, so you have to kind of go over again at about 90 degrees, and we're going over across 2, so we're going over the top of 2 bights at the top of the knot. As we're doing an expansion pass, and we're going under, and then we get to the bottom of the knot, we're going to go over 2 bights at the bottom of the knot. And now this one and this one are parallel, so both of these go under. We're going to go over this one. These 2 go over, so we're going under this one. So now we're splitting the parallel running strands. And that's the way to think about it, so that no matter how many times you want to expand a Turk's head, if you always remember to expand it with the same basic rules, you'll be successful. So you come over the first one, and we're going to come under this one. You notice these 2 go over, so we're going under, because we're doing an expansion pass. These 2 go under, we're going over. These 2 go under, so we're going under. Sorry, these 2 go over, so we're going under. And again, you don't want to pick up and snag the material. And it becomes more and more difficult not to snag nylon paracord or whipmaker cord when you're doing this, because the needle will try and grab just one fiber and it'll mess up the material. It won't be pretty anymore. These 2 go under. And we're going to go over this one, and we're back to where we started. So when we get back to the original place where we started, we're back to a Turk's head. So we've expanded this to 1, 2, 3, 4 bights. And you can kind of even these up a little bit. And then you're going to have to keep evening it up, but we're going to expand this. This is 4 bights. This is a 4 bights Turk's head. We're going to now expand it to 6. So we're going to follow the starting lead. It goes over, so we're going over, it goes under. And then it's an expansion pass, so we come out of the knot and over 2, and we're going to go under the knot. We're going to follow on the other side. So we're following on the right. Now we're going to follow on the left. And this bight needs to hang out and be fairly loose up here because we're crossing those 2. We went under that one. These 2 go under, so we're only concerned about this one. We're following this one. It goes over, so we're going over. And down here, we're going under. You want to make sure that you're keeping the outside out. And the X we're going over at the bottom because we come out of the knot. Now we have 2 parallel railroad tracks, and both of them go under, and we're crossing this X. So what we're going to do is cross this X at the bottom. We're going to follow and go run between these two and do the opposite of what these two do. So on the way up, after we cross, going under, as those two go over. Again, you don't want to suck up these bubbles. You want to leave these bubbles of looser material. You don't want to snug them up too much because you got to get in between, because on the way back down, we'll be splitting these two packs and reach in and grab this one. If you snug it up too much, it gets hard. These two go under, so we're going over that. Now up here at the top, there's the bubble from the top. Those two go over, so we're going under. And out the top of the knot. And we're coming out of the top. And then on the way back down, we'll come over this one. We're going to go under this one. I'm going to leave it plenty loose. And the big mistake you make the first few times you try and do these things is you make this knot too tight, and then there's no working room. So these two parallel tracks both go under, we're going over. These two tracks go over, so we're going to go under. And it looks a little messy down here, but I left this bubble. So these two tracks both go under, so we go over this one. These two tracks are both on the top, so we go under the one down here. And then we go over this one and under this one, and we're back to where we started. So now everything's kind of disjointed because I bunched all this stuff up, so you can kind of spread this knot out and even it a little bit. I'm going to tilt this a little bit. We're going to lift these. And I'm not the biggest expert on these. I'm better at whip design than tying knots, but I'm okay at tying knots. This knot is nice because this is a base or a foundational knot for a bunch of interweave knots that are very pretty and traditional for stuff. So if you look at the top of this knot now, we've expanded it to 6. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're back to the first bight. And you get this hexagonal pattern at the top. There's also a hexagonal pattern at the bottom for what it's worth. Now we're going to expand this knot further. So here's the original lead that we came back to, and we're right next to it. We're going to make another pass and expand this from a 6 to an 8. So rather than add extra passes in parallel and have a multiple pass knot, this knot isn't going to have multiple passes. It's going to have multiple bights. There's 2 ways to add more material, because you can see it's very gappy. You can add more passes, which just gives you more layers, you get 2 at a time, or you can do an interweave after you get enough bights. So I followed the lead strand that we started with, the first strand up, doing the same thing under, over, under, and we've come out of the knot. We're going to cross this X at the top and we're going to follow the other side of the X on the other side. So that this expansion process is easier on something where if you're tying it on the end of something, you know which direction is up and which direction is down, because we came up following the left lead. When we go down, we're following it on the left of a right lead, and you just follow it. And you'll notice there's more bumps as you go, and most people don't tie more than maybe a 6 bight, and you have to make sure that you stay in the tracks, so you don't want to get it on the wrong side of the tracks. So you notice we're following on the left doing the same thing. This one goes over, we go over, this one goes under, so we're going under, and it's an expansion pass. We went over an X at the top. And you can keep doing this and make a very, very, like you could do a six, this is going to end up at, I'm going to stop at 8, but you could expand this to 16 bight and you'd have a kind of a basket weave. So there's an X here at the bottom. We came out of the knot. Now we're going to follow these railroad tracks and do the opposite. So these two go over, we go under. But do you see how we're over that X? And again, do not tighten it too much, because you're going to have to reach in and grab this one down here on the way back through. So don't snug it up. There's plenty of time for dressing the knot later. And then we're following, doing the opposite. These two go under. So we're going over, and these two go over, so we're coming under. And out the top of the knot. And then it starts getting harder, because you see, up at the top, we need to come down and catch this down here, because we need to go under this one. To stay in the pattern. I'm just going to leave it a little loose. And we're going to follow, these two go under, so we're going over, these two go over, so we're going to go under. And just wiggle the tip of the needle, make sure you're not catching any fibers. Because you won't know if you caught any fibers. You truly won't know till you dress the knot, and it'll just mess everything up. And this knot is easier to tie in leather or rawhide than it is to tie in paracord, in my estimation. Although rawhide tends to dry as you're doing it. Okay, remember what I said about this bubble down here? These two go under, so we got to go over this one, and these two go over, so we got to go under this little bubble down here. Come back up parallel. So we've expanded to an 8 bight Turk's head here. So we're going to shift things around and try and even this and make it a little less of a mess. you'll see the knot is starting to fill in. And if you kept expanding it to 16 or so, it would be a pretty nice tight basket weave. But you can look at the top of the knot, and one nice thing with the split is you can see where the split is on the leather. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're back to the split. So now this is an 8 bight Turk's head. And I'm going to show you an interesting trick. So, because I like to share tricks, tips and tricks. So I like to hide the ends of these in the knot. But you notice these two are offset. And if you want things to be even, we're going to come through and we're going to pierce down through the starting lead. Okay. Then I'm going to run under 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go under the last 3 and completely out the top of this knot. And this little detail is weird, but it has a point here. And the point is it aligns everything so that the inbound strand pierces and that pierce will be underneath. And then if you dress this knot a little bit, so I'm going to just barely dress it so that it's a little more neat and tidy. But I'm holding on to the bottom side. I'm just going to take a little bit of the slack out because to do the interweave, you want to keep it all settled down, and you don't want it to have a lot of slack, but you really don't want this knot dressed before it's ready. I'm just going to take some of the slack out of it, but you always pin down this and take the slot out, otherwise that little union I made will cause itself problems. And since I'm going to leave the red traces at 8, I'm going to take the needle off. And it's a little easier to understand the interweave with 2 colors than it is to make a single pass knot. One of those evil half twists here. And you notice we're back in parallel where we started. And the whole point of that was just to take a little bit of the extra out. And that way we can just dress the knot up so that it's a little neater. One other advantage of working with the tube, take the loose end from the top and drop it into the top of the tube. And now you're not fighting a strand that's flopping around. And again, you don't have to be perfect with it, but you can see that it's octagonal on the top because it's an 8 bight. It's also octagonal on the bottom. Now we have our black strand, and we're going to do a gaucho pass. If you had a single strand knot instead of doing a Turk's head in one color and interweaving it with the second, best laid plans. Probably should put some glasses on because it's hard to see the tips of stuff. So I like to pin the strand I'm working on So if you were doing this as an interweave with one strand, you would cross and come on the left side. So I'm going to follow this lead just as though I were doing that. So if you were doing it all in one color as a gaucho, when you come up, instead of piercing it, you would come up and go on the other side and follow the lead on the left instead of the right. And this is the start of a gaucho interweave in a second color. And I'm fairly new to this knot. I've done a few of them, but I get people asking me, how did you do that? It's like,